Sit tight, my friends, as I weave a tale of magic and night. Let the fire burn low, and let the wind howl through the ridges of the lake, as the muses sign unto me, and the night speaks with my voice. There was once a young man who lived, worked, slept, and ate along the ridge of a great, dark lake, Devil's Lake, in which he fished and drank. He was a wild man, in harmony with nature, loving all things, alive or otherwise. But nature was not in harmony with him. The man lived in peace with the world for many years, each day and night the same as the last. But one night was different. The day was normal for the man, and the sun set, just as it had for millennia before. The night settled in, and the wind whispered through the trees. All was at peace for a time, and the moon rose, a bright eye high above the earth. But the moon this night was different. It glowed orange. The young man sat high on the cliff above Devil's Lake and watched with trepidation as this new moon rose. He knew the orange moon was a natural occurrence, but this was not a natural day. This day was Hallows' Eve, when the veil between this world and the next was thinnest. The ominous moon bearing down on him did not ease his fear. The moon appeared to have a face, and it watched and waited. The tall ridge of stone over the lake seemed to glow with the light of the moon, sparkling like a sheet of frosted glass. The ground below the man trembled slightly. Something was coming, he knew. But he did not know what, and for the first time in his life, he was truly afraid of the dark. The lake below shimmered, still as the sky above, and placidly reflected the trees around it. But there was a ripple in still water, and something below the lake moved. The reflections of the tree and the moon far overhead broke into shards of glass, and the wind stopped humming. Everything was silent as the water broke. Impossibly slowly, something appeared to be rising out of the water. The lake rippled as this new apparition, slow as ice, stretched its way higher and higher into this world. What undulated out of the water was, at first, nothing but a single tentacle, sharpened into a spear at its tip. It was red like fire, and spotted with dark blotches of night. It wiggled slowly, quietly, almost unnoticeably as it slid between worlds. It shimmered in the moonlight, but there was some unmistakably offset quality about it, something not of this world. And it most certainly wasn't. The man quaked, watching this monstrosity carefully. He had never seen anything like this before, but this was Hallows' Eve. He prepared himself for what else might appear above the water, fastening himself in a protective leather suit and wielding a heavy stone axe. But even with his weapon, a feeling of deep dread settled in the pit of his stomach, and he waited. Eventually, after what felt like weeks, the young man saw something more substantial than a tentacle float out of the water. It was at first nothing more than a red lump, as it was the base of the tentacle. The base too was covered in patches of nothing. Then the mass grew, and space itself seemed to spread apart, to create a void for the beast to pass through. The young man saw the creature rising out of the water had 10,000 eyes. The eyes were intelligent, large, and a deep yellow. They had slits like those of cats, but these slits were deeper, and showed a way into unimaginable horror. They darted around, watching everything, especially the young man. The 10,000 eyes circled the monster's giant head and observed all, learning best how it could be destroyed. Then came the smell, a scent like rotting fruit and decaying flesh that reached down into his throat, causing him to gag and taste something awful, something sulfuric and evil. The appearance of the devilish creature stopped the man cold in his tracks. He could feel a very real pressure in the air, like something building and growing. And suddenly, there was a cacophony like metal scraping on metal, poured from the spot broken in space within the lake. A sound like 100 billion screams of torment and anguish. It was as if hell itself outpoured the very noise within it. The beast climbed higher and higher into the air, underneath the light of the orange moon, hauling more of its horrendous body out of the other world and into this plane. And now the man could see all of it, not just a tentacle. The rest of its body appeared to be decaying, and rotted flesh fell from its bones, if they even could be called that. But what was on the skin was worse still. The man thought he could see faces, human faces, shift in form on the beast's skin, and then disappear into nothing. What appeared to be mouths ringed with sharp poisonous teeth, also moved freely on the abomination's skin. The man also thought he could see other, more horrible things, but he was not sure. The man felt a crushing fear in his chest, the kind of terror that only comes with a brush with death. Finally, after what the young man felt must have been years, the fiend reached the apex of its flight and shuddered, and the air, the very fabric of reality, seemed to shudder with it. The moon was at the very tip of its climb as well, and now began to descend, and the monster lowered with it, as if tied to the celestial body. The young man watched, and breathed a sigh of relief, seeing that he was not in any danger now. The worst was over, he thought. The single tentacle of the brute, the one that had first broken the surface like shattering a mirror, felt the man's change of heart. Taking this last opportunity, for the split second the man let his guard down, the creature struck. It lashed out like a whip, stabbing the man through the chest with the expertise of a master marksman. The young man choked on blood as his eyes grew wide with horror, looking down to see a lava-red tentacle impaled through his chest. The man's blood splashed carelessly onto the rock cliff, poisoned by the creature's filthy skin. The tentacle relaxed and pulled out of the man's body. The young man fell to his knees as his life seeped away slowly, saturating the stones he sat upon. He gasped through the blood in his throat, and his eyes watched the demonic atrocity as it slid silently now, beneath the still waves of the lake. One of its great eyes flicked around one last time, terrible fury reflected within, but also a great mirth. It did not have the opportunity to get fully into this world, but it was able to send something else in. The man died quietly, his last breath gurgling in his own blood. Quietly, quieter than the grave, the beast sunk back into its lair. But in its last moments in the world above, it watched its handiwork come to life and laughed a deep, evil laugh. The blood of its victim slowly began to gather in one spot, like a ghastly bubble. The gory mask of poisoned blood grew and swelled until it finally burst with a single definite blast. The forceful pop released hundreds, perhaps thousands, of small droplets of tainted blood into the night. A droplet landed near the man's glazed eyes and began to change. It was no longer blood, but now the same color as the Leviathan that had birthed it. It swirled and spun on its axis until it became solid and opened, revealing a single yellow eye. And this happened over and over again, each and every droplet forming an eye, as the man's body finally ran cold, drained of blood. The droplets blinked as one and slunk off into the darkness to find their next prey and to wait. And nature watched, impassively, as the man's body slowly decomposed over many days, and the rocks and trees grew around him. He became part of the earth that he loved. That is a different story. It is said sometimes, on some nights when the moon is full, if one stands in just the right spot on the cliff at Devil's Lake, one can see a ripple when no wind has blown. The lake quivers, as if something massive beneath its surface is waiting, watching, for an opportunity to surface. And on some Hallows Eves, when the orange moon coincides with that dreaded night, it is spoken that one can see a red tentacle rise from the water to this very day, patiently awaiting a new chance to stretch into this world. The times haven't been right yet, but someday they will. And it is always a matter of waiting. The blood and the beast are patient. The eyes are growing in number as they find more sources of nourishment. Just how many there are today is impossible to tell, and they're too small to ever be noticed. The size of a drop of blood, but more dangerous than any weapon. They may be in your house, and you will never even know. They are out there in the darkness. The young man died alone on the ridge, and the earth reclaimed his body as its own. No one has spoken of him since, but all this has been recorded faithfully by the omnipresent night, the watchers in the darkness. And all this I can tell you. But let it be a warning. The night does you no harm. Do not be afraid of the dark. Be afraid of what lurks within it.